Christians, the word evolution is weighed down with negative connotations. Oftentimes, it is flung into Christians' faces that he is unreasonably ignoring proven science. In many ways, current scientific view seems to differ very greatly from what the Bible seems to say. How should a Christian respond to these claims? How should they reconcile how leading science seems to indicate a world billions of years old, while a traditional biblical interpretation implies that a universe is only a couple thousand, or that life evolved completely through natural processes rather than God creating species individually? Of course, there are almost innumerable different views on how to respond to those questions, but each can be separated into three different categories. The young earth position, whose members believe that God created the world in 6 24-hour periods and made each different kind of animal individually. A more moderate view, the old earth position, says that God created the universe over a period of billions of years, but still individually created each kind of animal. The final view, theistic evolution, claims the biblical account of creation is purely metaphorical, while the earth was formed in billions of years and animals were formed through the process of evolution. While young earth and theistic evolutionary groups certainly demonstrate reasonable argumentation and commendable levels of conviction, I will argue in what follows that old earth creation presents itself as the most accurate literal translation of the Bible and simultaneously a precise scientific view of how the earth was created. Theistic evolution hinges on the theory popularized by Darwin, that evolution is not only real, but also was the mechanism used to form the species of animals as we know them. A key element in this theory is that the primary drive for evolution comes through natural selection. This claims that because there is a struggle to survive, and yet not everything can, only the strongest will survive. In this way, the weaker types of animals will disappear to be replaced by the new types. Eventually, these new types will become a different species altogether. By definition, this process occurs over a long period of time. Such a theory would, of course, need substantial evidence to be considered true. Francis Collins, a geneticist appointed director of the National Institute for Health and a leader in the Human Genome Project, believes that the proof can be found in genetics. During his study, he found that in each human, there are around 60 mutations in their genes from their parents. Some are good changes, others can cause problems, but most have little to no effect. Each of these mutations has a chance of increasing the survivability of that human, however. Multiply that by the sheer number of humans, and there are a lot of mutations going around that could potentially increase someone's survivability, and you can apply this principle to any type of species. Collins then talks about how our DNA is similar to monkeys, mice, and other creatures. In his mind, these similarities prove that humans and these animals have similar ancestry, making evolution historical. He doesn't simply give scientific evidence, however. He claims that the scriptures support evolution as a creation mechanism. The point of Genesis, in his mind, is not to be a scientific textbook, but instead is God giving us other more important truths, such as making sure that we know that he created the universe. He invokes Augustine, claiming that he says that the Genesis creation story shouldn't be taken entirely literally. Instead, Collins says it is poetic. This would mean that the Bible isn't actually commenting on the scientific creation of the universe at all, so it doesn't disprove the age of the universe or evolution. His DNA evidence is thorough, but is not conclusive enough to prove that all life began with a common ancestor. Collins assumes that similarity requires different species to have a common ancestor, but there are other explanations for why they could be similar. One being, these types of creatures need similar functions to live, and so thereby they would need similar instructions to complete those functions. Thus, similar DNA does not require common ancestry. Also, an accurate reading of the Bible will tell us that all manner of death was a result of the fall. As Romans says, the wages of sin is death. Since evolution requires death in order for it to function, it can't have existed before the fall, making creationary evolution incompatible with Scripture. The question that now remains is the age of the universe. The primary issue the young earth position is concerned with is the purity of the Bible being maintained. Paul Reynolds and John Mark Reynolds, trained philosophers and biologists, were worried that people were using scientific findings to reinterpret Scripture. Whether the Bible should be interpreted literally or figuratively shouldn't be based on recent science, but rather on textual evidence within the Bible itself. In light of this, they claim that the Bible gives very little evidence for the earth being old. In Genesis 1, it talks about God creating each element of creation on a certain day. The simplest translation of this passage would be to say that the world was created in 6 24-hour days. They also claim that the scientific evidence for an old universe is not as convincing as some would have you believe. Science has concluded that the Earth is old for various reasons. However, observations are not the same as argued conclusions. How the evidence is interpreted is just as important as the evidence itself. Reynolds and Mark take the evidence and draw a different conclusion, that the Earth is young. One example of this is found in the carbon dating system. People of a young Earth position discount carbon dating because most scientists don't believe in the flood, which could drastically have changed the amount of carbon-14 in the air, thereby throwing off the amounts and skewing the numbers. This may not be the most pleasing answer to those who don't believe in God, but they would rather bend a scientific explanation to the Word of God than vice versa. The reasoning is sound, but the biblical account doesn't actually require us to believe that the earth was created in 6 days, allowing us to open up to science which says the universe is old. The key operating word in this hermeneutical discussion is the word day, in the Hebrew being the word young. It is a general word which can mean many different kinds of time. It can mean years in 1 Kings 1:1, age in Genesis 18:21, ago as an indefinite time in 1 Samuel 9:20, season in Genesis 44, ever in Psalm 19:9, and evermore in Deuteronomy 28:29. This word that is used in the Bible in all these different ways is the same one that is used in the Genesis account. As Greg Naiman from Old Earth Ministry says, young is not just used for days, it is for time in general. Even within Genesis 1 and 2, the word is used to represent different times. In Genesis 1:5, it is used to mean daylight, and in Genesis 1:14, it means days in the traditional sense when it says, and let them be for signs and for seasons, and for days and years. Thus, it is clearly possible that the Bible was referring to time in general in the Genesis account, and not just specific days. In certain textual references, each questionable translation of day is preceded by the qualification that the evening and the morning constituted such a day. The problem is that the sun and moon were not created until day 4. Thus, for at least the first 3 days, the Bible must be referring to something other than solar, evening, and morning. So whenever this formulaic phrase is used, it could very well be referring to a period of time beginning and ending, rather than the traditional days to which we are accustomed. The text also uses a parallel literary device, where 3 realms are created in the first 3 days, then creatures to fill those realms are created in the same order in the next 3. The text is cluing us in that we should read it at least somewhat metaphorically, but it is also a history book, so that we know what is being said is completely true. My conclusion is that the first 2 chapters of Genesis are a highly stylized description of creation, that while accurate, are not providing a detailed scientific account of the nuts and bolts of creation. Thus, just because the word day is used doesn't require the universe to be made in a week, since it isn't dealing with specific time. Thus, the problem of stars being so far away is no longer a problem. We can believe that light traveled billions of years without violating the truth of Scripture. There's also evidence of an old Earth and a universe much closer to home. Francis Collins points to carbon dating as the best sign of how old the Earth is. Essentially, this process can be used to date rocks and fossils using known ratios of radioactive elements and their related isotopes. Examples of these are uranium becoming lead, potassium becoming argon, and strontium becoming rubidium. We can observe now how long it takes for these elements to decay into the other. When you come upon a rock with a pair of these elements inside, you can measure their ratio, and, knowing their half-lives, you can make a fairly accurate calculation of how old the rock is. A similar process called carbon dating is used for fossils using carbon-14 and carbon-12. According to Collins, the oldest rocks that have been dated on the current Earth's surface are approximately 4 billion years old, but nearly all meteorites and a number of moon rocks have been dated at 4.5 billion years old. As said before, the fossils on Earth could have been affected by the flood, but the rocks on the moon and the meteorites wouldn't have been, and yet they still date 4 million years. Many people who hold an old Earth position also say animals were formed through evolution. However, the two do not need to be intertwined. God intervened just like it is described in Scripture, and spoke the animals into creation at some point in the process. Since death was the result of the fall, somehow none of these animals died. A possible theory is that since God didn't give the command to reproduce until after man was created, the animals didn't overwhelm the earth. In reality, we don't know exactly how the animals didn't do this, but we do know that they did through God's divine providence. There is another position which claims to bridge the gap between old Earth and young Earth theory. Einstein came up with his famous theory that time is actually relative to speed, And Gerard Schroeder uses this reasoning to explain how billions of years of creation could still be 1 week as we know it. He claims that since the Big Bang was an explosion of energy, the particles were moving fast enough to see major changes in the relativity of time. He claims that time didn't start until matter had formed, which is another key component to Einstein's theory. Using math, he discovered that from the perspective of the place where matter was first formed, it took about 6 days for the Earth to fully form. Because of relativity, while it took 6 days from there, from Earth's viewpoint, it still took billions of years. Thus, both 6 days and billions of years would both be the correct answer to the question of how long it took the universe to form, but only if the Bible takes the perspective from where matter was first formed. Since this is when time starts, Schroeder claims in the beginning placed the perspective there because it is talking about the beginning of time. However, since the beginning of time and the start of the Big Bang have been declared separate by both Einstein and Schroeder, this is a dangerous assumption since it removes God from the beginning of creation. Also, this assumes that God takes the perspective of time, when God is actually outside of time. Thus, there is nothing in the Bible that justifiably places the perspective at the beginning of matter. So while this is a fascinating theory, it is not the end-all theory that sweeps the rest away. As you can surely see, there is no simple answer to this question about creation. All these theories have their strengths and weaknesses. So when we discuss this topic with others, we should do so with charity, since both you and them are just trying to get at the truth of the matter. I encourage everyone here to look into this topic for themselves, but to do so through the process of determining what the Scripture is saying first, and then deciding which parts of current science are scriptural or not. Thank you.
Okay, now that somebody asked a question. When you researched your genes, did you compare the concepts of where the scriptures say after their own kind? And did you make any comparisons with that, like of chromosomes? Because you can change genes, but there's 26 chromosomes. You can't jump and change a person and have 25 chromosomes and have them live. Those are details.
That was not one of the topics I explored, but it's an excellent point.
Thanks, Dad.
Eliott, you did a great job, and I love how you accounted for the literary style. Did you, as you were looking at that, did you, in your larger research, did you account for the original audience and think about what might be going on in Genesis 1 and 2, what Moses was trying to accomplish with the original audience that heard Genesis 1 and 2?
Yes. In Genesis, Moses is trying to refute the other claims of creation during this day, which had some sort of polytheistic, there was already something there, and then a whole bunch of gods formed that into something that is now the earth. And I think his point was to actually say that, no, there is nothing, and then God came and made everything. And so that was really the main point, I think, of what Moses was trying to teach in Genesis 1.
Thank you.